Hello. So again, I'm here on the stage, so I'll be the moderator of today's session. So yes, we have great speakers for the session. We listened to two presentations earlier, and we have two male experts for our panel discussions as well. So the first topic is about the ship management company. Well, there are many ship management companies, and Wilhelmsen Ship Management is a very famous firm. So the Captain Scott Litch is with us, so we are going to invite him for his remark.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me here today. As you heard in the introduction, I've been in the maritime industry for 45 years since I was a young man. I've spent a lot of time in various parts of the world, working in various parts of the maritime industry. And I could not be more pleased to be involved in the encouragement of more women coming into the maritime industry. Traditionally, it's a very male-dominated industry, of course. But once again, I'm absolutely 101% sure that, especially today and moving into the future, that there is no aspect of the maritime industry, no aspect at all, that women cannot compete with men on an absolutely equal footing and do as good, in many cases, a better job in actual fact. We may discuss that a little bit later. Anyhow, ship management, I've been asked to tell you a little bit about ship management. So ship management, this is very often, primarily, ship managers are third parties. They manage ships for owners. That is to say, owners will purchase the ships, and then they do not want to employ all of the experts that it takes to have the ships conduct their business and move around the world themselves. So they outsource. They outsource this to specific companies that engage in this, and this is what a ship manager does. A ship manager provides the experts, the engineers, the navigators, and the administrators, and there are just as many administrators as ex-seagoing staff. They provide the expertise to keep the ship moving from port to port around the world. And a ship manager will very often manage ships for several owners, not just for one owner, but for several owners. And the benefit of that, of course, is that the owner can concentrate on the commercial aspect of his shipping operation, making sure that the cargo that is booked by usually their own commercial department is handled on ships that are well certificated, well mained, and well crewed by the crew that are on board, and that they don't have to worry about this. They're essentially business people, and they will outsource this to the third-party company. And another significant benefit of that, of course, is economy. For every ship owner to hire captains, chief engineers, administrators, electricians, etc., is quite an expensive undertaking. So if you can concentrate all this expertise within one company, your ship manager, and that ship manager can provide a higher level of service and skill at a lower cost, and perhaps the owner could do it for himself. If a ship owner is a substantial company, such as Hyundai Merchant Marine here in Korea, for example, they literally have hundreds of ships, and they're quite able and do manage ships in-house themselves. But for the smaller owner that may have 10, 20, even one ship, there are some owners that operate just one ship, then the ship manager is an ideal solution for these owners, where they can get economy of scale and the benefit of having their ships managed by a group of experts that do just that and only that. So the ship manager's role is to make sure that the ship has the crew on board. All of the crew are certificated and experienced in the type of ship that they're operating. Make sure that the ship is certificated, as you can imagine, like everything else in the world today. Safety is paramount. It is absolutely paramount, and part of that is to make sure that every little piece of machinery on board is certificated. even small, minute parts of machinery have individual certificates, and that these certificates are all in order, that the ships and the equipment are regularly inspected and maintained to a minimum standard. And the ship manager will take care of that. And thereafter, the ship manager will coordinate with the owner to make sure that he understands where the ship needs to be, Busan, shall we say, to start. And then, as the ship sets off on its commercial voyage, then the commercial department will advise the captain on board where to take the ship to next. And the ship manager will monitor to make sure that all the goods and services that are required to keep the ship running in operation are organized and in place at the various ports around the world. So this essentially is what a ship manager does. It provides a concentrated center of excellence to a ship owner for a competitive price, essentially. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much in a nutshell what a ship manager is, Captain Kim.
Thank you so much, Scott. Scott 선장님께서는
And Mr. Scott Rich is working with the ship management company, and he just explained the role of ship management company in the industry. And the speakers and the panelists of today's session are really important people, and I believe that the Dr. Iman Ihia from Egypt. Well, let's say that we are exporting a product from Egypt. So let's say that we put some goods on board, and that is going to the United States Washington port or like LA port. Then it should be moved by this vessel, and from there it has to use the inland transportation. So if it reaches the Washington, D.C., it needs to get to the department store, and in the end, it needs to complete its last mile delivery for very consumer. So in this long journey, the ship management company plays a very important role in the initial stage, because that is to ensure the safety of the important goods that needs to be delivered to consumers in a very far land. And Vice President Gloria Choi, she talked about safe unloading practices at terminals and ports, or loading practices as well. And ensuring safety in those areas can be very important as well. So as for this journey from Egypt to the US, for example, well, the vessel moving those goods can go through the Busan port as well. So we all play a very important role in each segment of this journey. So now the next panelist is Dr. Lee Jong-deok. He is group lead of Samsung SDS's logistics unit. So he would be in charge of the process after the goods reach the LA port, probably. So let's hear what he has to say about this. Thank you for the introduction. And well, first I have to say that I'm very honored to be in this beautiful city of Busan for this important event. And I'm so happy to see all of you here in the room. Well, I came here from Seoul today. And like Dr. Kim just said, yes, I am responsible for inland transportation. And this session in particular is about safety in global logistics and a response to safe logistics. So I would like to share some ideas about that. Well, currently we are going through a very prolonged pandemic. It's been over 2 years. And from a few days ago, we are hearing about new variants like Omicron. So many countries, including the United States, Japan, and the European countries, are considering the shutdown measures again. Japan already shut down their country completely. So logistics disruption, well, that's something that we are talking about a lot these days. But does COVID-19 play a very important role in this? Is it the only cause? We don't know. However, if you look at the timeline, at the end of the 2019, we saw the outbreak of the COVID-19, and it became a big issue around the mid-March and April, and it became a very serious issue on the western coast of the United States. And it became a serious issue because vessels, or PSW, that's Long Beach, Oakland, and those areas in the United States. So Long Beach and LA ports couldn't receive vessels. Even when vessels reached the area, they could not park the vessels because they didn't have enough windows in the port first. But the another reason is that containers in this LA Long Beach ports were just mixed up because they were delayed so much inland. And the reason of this delay is that unloading activities were not done properly. When vessels reach the port, unloading activities need to start. However, Long Beach port didn't have enough head and chassis for unloading containers. Then why did they have this shortage problem all of a sudden? The reason is that there were two issues in the United States last year. Well, we had it here in Korea as well. It's called economic impact payment. That is some sort of, relief, disaster relief. So the United States paid out this EIP 3 times, $1,200, $600, and $1,400 each. However, unlike the policymakers' anticipation, people started to use money so much. So they started to buy a lot of things. For example, because people thought that this was just additional money in their pocket, so they increased their consumption. So actually, the shipping industry thought that COVID-19 is going to cause a great halt in their operation, but because of the increased consumption from the United States, the shipping industry became so busy. And this increased consumption caused a stacking of goods inland depot, and that became a problem. Trucks, particularly transporting imported goods, went to the depot and they wanted to unload the goods, but the depot and storage was full. So because of all this, they didn't have enough trucks and chassis for loading and unloading. And some old facilities in these ports were just not enough to handle all these increased transportation and volume. And another thing is that due to the pandemic, of course, many laborers died actually. That led to the shortage issue of drivers. So with the shortage of drivers, inland transportation had some problems as well. And also, inland truck drivers started to work with the port transportation services as well. However, all this mixed-up situation didn't work so well, and that is the reason of the logistics disruption. So what I would like to say is that we can't say that the logistics disruption was caused by the COVID-19, but it did have some impact. And in the end, some Korean companies exporting goods to the United States through Long Beach Port and LA Port couldn't deliver their goods in time. Well, the first speaker talked about the delay in shipping first. And this issue is something that we can't really talk about these days, because only less than 10% of vessels reach the destination in the western coast of the United States in time. And the delivery period is about 13 days as of today. And at the Long Beach port, we have 86 vessels being parked, and the total value of the goods on board is over $3 trillion. So it is really difficult for them to transport their goods inland in time. So exporting companies and cargo owners feel really uncomfortable with the situation. Just delay in marine shipping itself is a big concern for them, but inland transportation and delay in inland transportation is causing some cost for them as well. And this leads to the issue of demurraging. So demurrage was not really serious issue in the past because it is just $5 or $10. However, for one Korean company this year, the demurrage cost was more than 100 billion won. Well, 100 billion won? You might think that, oh, that's a big number. However, if you put it in the context, with the collapse of Hanjin shipping in 2017, the logistics cost loss was about like $230 billion or $250 billion. So that was just less than $300 billion. So the collapse of a big shipping company costed 300 billion won, and the demurrage cost was $300 billion, and the demurrage cost is $100 billion. So that's a huge amount if you put it into context, and this is a very unprecedented case. So this delay in shipping and demurrage and many other issues need to be handled. So the Biden administration adopted new policy. So he took the presidential order to impose emergency fee for ship liners. So it was introduced in November. But luckily, the delaying issue in shipping was eased somewhat in the United States, so they are not moving to the second level of this initiative. But the goal of this initiative is to have ports to quickly move the goods from their terminal. If the goods are stored in the terminal for 1 month, that fee goes up to like $50,000. And that cost needs to be first borne by shipping lines, which will ultimately be transferred to end consumers or cargo owners. So this means that cargo owners and shippers need to pay not only the demurrage but also DLP. So that's a huge issue. So again, I can't say that COVID-19 caused a direct impact on this issue, but it is somewhat related to this. And many people say, experts say that COVID-19 is happening because we are not safeguarding our planet. So we need to focus on the safety first if we do not want to see these unprecedented cases. So this delay in shipping in the United States, these issues might not be resolved in near future, probably by the mid-2023. And probably it is possible that we would see another serious event in the future. So we'll probably stop here first.
이종덕 박사님 대단히 감사합니다. 이종덕 박사님은 또
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee, and he's also responsible for. He's also working for the Samsung SDGs, so he knows a lot about this whole congestion and delay in logistics in the U.S. and he talked about what are really causing the delay and congestion. So it's triggered by the COVID-19, and also if we don't really take care of the safety, it will have a huge impact on the global trade. So we heard from the panelists, and we have a few minutes left. So from Egypt, Dr. Iman Yehia said that she wants to make some comments. So please.
You have a floor.
Yes, sure. Can I say just a comment and give one more example of the one about shipping from Egypt to you asked for the USA. No, I'm going to give you another real example happened with me to export from Egypt to the Netherlands Antilles in South America, which is more far than this destination. You know, the vessel takes from 45 to 50 days to reach from Alexandria port to Aruba or Curacao, any of these two ports. So the shipping company or the logistics to prove that it's 50% on your success. Now in these two islands, I'm well known there, and I am the only exporter from Egypt to these two islands or in this area. Why? Because this shipping line handle my shipment in a good way. As it takes from 45 to 50 days, you know, I prepare and I export to there the date palm, the palm that gives the fruits for the dates, okay? So this palm can handle, yes, but not for this long time. So I prepare it well for the root ball and so on. So because the shipping line was accurate and arrives in time, and I did the preparation for this 45 days to 50 days, can you imagine that sometimes the palm arrives giving the fruit, the small seed, it's still green, but it's a live palm. The palm arrives in a good condition and giving the new fruit. Can you imagine that? So this made me succeed in these two islands, and I am well known there. If you ask anybody working in the horticulture about El Sindibet for export or about Egypt palm, any one of them, they will tell you, okay, Mrs. Iman Yahya from Egypt, yes, we know it, and we get our orders from her only. One of the clients wanted to try another company. What happened? He looked for the cheapest service, but at last he got dead palm. So for logistics and shipping, he made me succeed 100%. He completed the 50% of my job. And I am successful now there. Can you imagine for how long? It's for 11 years, because I started my business in 2005. So I started to put my feet on these two islands. Now they know me well, and if they have any order, they contact, and they don't trust anybody else except me and my company in Egypt to export to this very far away island, because not all the shipping lines go there, only one or two shipping lines that goes to this direction. But in all cases, good preparation and good logistics, this is very important, and I put stress on it. This 50%, when it succeeds, it will make you the best exporter or importer in the whole world, and it will make your business succeed. If this 50% fail, your work, your whole job and your plans, your money, everything, your reputation also. Because in this case, you will lose your reputation, because they will not say, this is because the bad company. No, they will say because this is a bad product. So this is what I wanted to comment, that I wanted to prove how important this point in our business in general, whether in import or export. Thank you very much for taking me your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yehia. Like you said, 50% of the success in trade is by the logistics. So it takes like 45 or 50 days for delivering goods. So yes, that was a great example. And I understand that delivering goods and exporting goods is not easy, but it is very important. So do we have any questions from the floor as well? Anyone? We have about like 10 minutes for the session. So if there's anyone who has some comments or questions, well, I'll give you more time, and I actually have some questions to our panelists. So my question goes to, well, Vice President Gloria Choi earlier said, so Wakashiho vessel was capsized earlier, and you mentioned that 2 crew members were on board for over a year. Well, when I was working as a captain, well, I remember the time that I spent more than 10 months on board. That was really tiring. And because of the COVID-19 now, it is hard to change crew members on the ship these days. So as you said, well, there were crew members who were staying on board for too long on the Wakashio vessel. So, well, now I would like to ask Mr. Scott Rich about this matter. So due to the COVID-19, seafarers find it difficult to take some rest. It is difficult for them to take turns in time. So is it true? And because of this, do you think that they have some increase in their fatigue level? And do you also think that this is also having some impact on the maritime accidents?
Short answer, yes. Absolutely. There's absolutely no doubt it's having an impact. The legal basis is that all seafarers can spend 11 months on board. 11 months. This is the maximum by law. During this COVID period, we have seen situations where seafarers had to stay on beyond 11 months, 12 months as the example on the Waikiko incident, of course. But it has been 14 months in some cases. I don't speak about my own company, but I know of other instances where seafarers have been on board for as much as 14 months. It isn't all as a result of poor planning or poor logistics on behalf of the owner or indeed the ship manager, as I am. In many respects, it's been down to national governments closing borders, restrictions around moving. This has been the prime consequence for the seafarers being on board longer than is allowed by the law. Certainly more than 11 months is way too long for any seafarer. I'm sure all of you can understand that anybody going to work in the morning and not coming back for 11 months, that's quite an undertaking, And of course the people on board are tired after all that amount of time. What I would say, I mean, for those of you that are in the maritime sector, for those of you that are going into the maritime sector, for those of you that are going to encourage people to go into the maritime sector, you're going to be a risk manager. Maritime sector, for the most part, is about delivering goods from A to B. And ideally, the manufacturer of the goods would like to sell his goods and hand them over to the buyer outside the back door of his factory. The buyer of the goods would like to purchase the goods from the seller and have them appear on his shelves the very next day. In fact, I think it's a fairly popular program. If we think about Star Trek, the TV show, the American TV show, what we'd really like to see is goods being dematerialized in the factory and rematerialized on the shelves. This is what we'd really like to see. So no matter how good we are in the maritime logistics industry, we can never move the goods fast enough, and we can never move the goods in a sufficiently cost-effective way. Everybody always wants to see the goods moved faster and at less cost. So as a consequence for that, all of the people, myself and everyone sat here really, we're involved in risk management. How much risk are we prepared to take to lower that cost of transportation and to speed it up? So this essentially is what we're involved in the maritime sector. And it's true with regard to the seafarers also. My own experience from Europe is that I would work as a junior officer for 4 months on board. That would be a maximum. And latterly as captain on passenger ferries, I was working 1 month at a time, 1 month on board and 1 month at home. So for the various shipping countries around the world, we see, for example, in the US and Europe, where I come from, where the shorter time that the crew spends on board increases the cost. It increases the cost, of course it does. And ultimately, it's the buyer, the customers for the goods that are going to pay that cost. This is why, over the period of my 40 years in the maritime sector, we've seen that the crewing of vessels has moved gradually to the east. Most vessels around the world are crewed by seafarers from Asia. And this is because they're prepared to work on board longer and at less cost. And with that comes risk. So I bring you back to that same point. It's about risk management. What are we as managers of the maritime industry? What is society prepared to accept? The Waikiko, for example, we've got this huge oil spill taking place in Mauritius, damaging the environment. These gentlemen had been on board for more than a year. Was that risk right? Was it right? Probably not. Yeah. A question, something for you to think about.
예, 감사합니다. 플로어에서
Thank you. And it seems like that we have a question from the floor. Thank you very much for your insightful speeches and discussion. And listening to you, I can see that it is not like we are going back to the previous era of this logistics disruption, but I would like to know when we can go back to those previous years. Dr. Lee, could you provide the answer? Sure. Many professionals say that the current logistics congestion is a huge issue, mostly in the United States. And the U.S. prepared $500 million for funding West Coast port development, but that is the issue for the future. Currently, we have to resolve this congestion right now. And when the world was hit by the financial crisis in 2008, we had this similar issue in the logistics field. But back then, the shipping cost dropped dramatically, causing a lot of difficulties for shipping companies. So going back to the normal stage took about 25 months back then, according to various research. So considering the current situation, and considering that this is due to, partially at least, due to the COVID-19, and if the peak was like a year ago, for example, probably we would have to wait for another 20 months at least, so that the current situation free falls and goes back to the normal stage. However, even when the situations go back to the normal situation, I don't think that we can go back to the previous years of the pandemic. I believe that shipping lines will have a greater say and a clout in the field in the future. Okay, so I think that I'm going to give the last comment for the session. So yes, this session is about women in maritime and maritime safety. So I would like to know the participation rates of female workers in the field. So we have many experts for the port, ship management, and inland logistics and terminal operation. And I am a professor at law school, so at least we have professionals from 5 different areas. Then I would like to ask Dr. Imanya here that how many female workers you have in this trade and logistics industry.
Unfortunately, only 3. The other are men, because you know the nature of my job is preparing and dealing with gardeners and so on. But in general, with truck and so on, they need a man. They will handle it in a better way. But in general, I have 3 women out of 10. 7 men and 3 ladies. 2 of them are handling logistics. One of them is handling the shipping with the shipping lines, and the other one is handling the custom clearance and so on. So everyone has her own part. The third one is following up the moving of the cargo and the farms and the plants, the preparation and so on. So they are 3 out of 10.
예, 감사합니다.
And this is a low percentage.
예, 감사합니다. 자, 다음은 우리 글로리.
And moving on, I would like to ask Gloria Choi the same question.
At the moment, we are still having a few percentage in the terminal. And actually, in 2019, we start to have the diversity empower female program in our company. And we also encourage the university student, the female workers. We provide the placement for the student to work as a part-time in our terminals. And we have a lot of facilities that we tailor for the female. For example, we have the child care center that our employees can bring the baby, having the baby sitting in the company, and then they still can work. So we did a lot of an initiative to really attract more female working. And at the moment, we have female working as a remote automated crane operator in our terminals. And they are all females working on round the clock. It doesn't matter agenda. So we still have the people encourage female to join this industry. And not just only working on the frontline people, but also playing the role on management and executive. So this is also our commitment to have grow up our female in our company. So we have DP role for women program, and then we have different customized leadership program for female.
예, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. And again, for Mr. Scott Rich.
So 1.25% is women in the maritime industry. That's the ratio. So what about the Wilhelmsen or your company? So how many women are working as the seafarer?
What? At what, please?
No, the question is to Scott Rich.
Yeah. Okay. It varies. What I would probably say between 5 and 10% of our crews on board the ship. We have more than 1,000 seafarers. 5 to 10% on board at that time. What I will say is within the office environment here in Korea, I'm very proud to say that 40% of my colleagues in the office are ladies. So a lot of the ladies that started out on board the vessel, they didn't progress through to be captains and chief engineers, but they have moved into the office to work with us there.
예, 비렐름사는 상당히 더 좋은.
So that is for the Wilhelmsen company. So it's a really great.
또 삼성의.
And again, the question goes to Dr. Lee Jong-dok. What is the female ratio in your company? Well, I would like to talk about the women's participation or proportion in the logistics industry in general. So in the US, ship owners are called BOCC, and ship liners without owning the ships are called freeboarders or NBOCC. So you two mentioned the proportion at BOCC. And as for the NBOCC, the female workers are about 70%, which is really fortunate. And the reason for this high percentage is that most of them are working in office, and the jobs are really stable. And because they are handling international discussions and businesses, which are pretty dynamic, they can play a very helpful role. But however, I believe that we have to raise this proportion or percentage in BOCC as well. We are seeing some collapsing barriers between BOCC and NBOCC and commerce and e-commerce. So I expect a higher percentage at BOCC as well. Thank you. Then I would like to make my final comment. I believe that the legal society has a large participation by women. The Korea University Law School's total enrollment capacity is 120 every year. And 1 year, 70 students were female, which is about 60% of the total capacity. But in most cases, the female-male ratio is about 40 to 60. And in order to become a maritime lawyer, about 40% are female in my school. So in Korea, we have 50 specialized maritime lawyers, and about 40% of them are female. And personally, I have 3 daughters. And considering my wife, 75% of the family members are female, right? So females are so crucial, and that's the final comment. Thank you so much for participating in this session.